So before I actually get started with my comments, I did want to take a moment and come from a place of gratitude. This gratitude comes from for our sponsors, Google, Chevron, Infosys, Fairchild Botanical Garden, and Make Community, for our exhibitors, Matter Hackers, X Prize, and ShopBot. And I will put in a cheap plug. We do actually have virtual exhibit booths, and so please do go to them. They are giving away things. It actually is pretty exciting. I was very excited that we were able to transition that. I'm grateful for our speakers. Thank you again so much, Dr. Leah Haynes, for joining us, and for everyone who will speak today, tomorrow, all the way through Saturday. For our volunteers, there are countless volunteers that are working now, helping us man the chat, helping us take notes, thanks Dan, helping us run this whole thing. So I really appreciate everyone that pitched in, and especially to the people, there are a number of people that just pitched in today. They were like, you know something, I have extra time, I'll help. And we really, really appreciate that. I am so grateful for our supportive and fantastic board members. You are amazing and a source of my personal strength. And our staff that's been doing all of this, I cannot thank you enough for helping keep my sanity throughout all of this. And finally, to all of you that are here, our attendees, for being at our very first virtual NOMCON. We've already had, one technical issue, so that means all the technical issues should be done, right? Like, we're done with those, okay. Just kidding, we probably will have more, but just continue to maintain this sort of feeling of gratitude that we're able to connect together, this feeling of just being willing to share, give each other a little bit of grace, give us all a little bit of patience, and then I think we're gonna have a really amazing experience. I am really grateful for your participation, especially in the midst of what truly has been a remarkably difficult time in our history as the human race. It's been marked by injustice, death, riots, destruction, and global pandemic, all happening at the same time. In the midst of this moment in time, I, like you, feel so many very different and complex emotions. I, like you, am astounded and heartbroken by the continued pain and loss of life experienced by so many right now due to the COVID-19 pandemic, including the preventable deaths caused by the lack of adequate access to personal protective equipment for our community's most essential and critical workers, and also for our most marginalized and vulnerable populations. I, like you, am overcome by the continued pain and loss of life experienced by Black Americans, including the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Sean Reed, and Ahmaud Arbery. Responses to these horrific realities continue to unfold, sometimes peacefully and sometimes with a physical vengeance that may lead to more violence and brutality. I know personally, as a Black woman myself, as a mother and a wife to individuals that are Black Americans, I am personally overcome with feelings of grief, frustration, fear, and anger with regard to the treatment of Black and Brown Americans and the patterns of violence that we have witnessed and experienced, not only in this past few days, but over many lifetimes of history. Yet, in the midst of this very, very difficult moment in time, I am also overcome with another emotion, that of immense hope. You see, I think that there is a hope in the call to the particular call to each of us in the midst of this. The makers, the doers, the builders, the creatives, and the problem solvers in communities all over the world. And I'm honored to actually convene our community of maker leaders together one more time in the midst of this great moment to dialogue and move forward towards a collective impact that I know that only we can make. As we enter into our annual convening and its theme of sustainability, building and supporting an ecosystem that sustains us all, we are reminded of the personal responsibility that we each bear, and not only the objects that we choose to make and create, but also in the community, the ecosystem, the world that we choose to make and create, build and sustain around us. And in considering that reminder, I feel a glimmer of hope. You see, that hope comes from a recent past. You see, over the past 2 months, we have personally witnessed our nation of makers take on an audacious challenge, that of providing millions of pieces of personal protective equipment to communities around the world. We know that many of you have been working extremely long hours, volunteering your time and your precious resources to fill in the gaps in PPE and supplies, to support your local communities, to protect healthcare and other frontline essential workers. We know that you're doing this within the context of your own spaces facing extreme financial constraints. This was not the job you expected, nor was it one that you entered into expecting great praise or gratitude. You did it. You made this choice to nurture your local ecosystem simply because it needed to be done. That is just who you are. You're the fixers of the world. This tremendous accomplishment is the demonstrated strength and power in the collective unity of the maker community. These aren't just words. We have millions of pieces of data, tangible items, face shields delivered, ear savers printed, masks made, communities positively impacted. We have seen the power of the collective in action on Facebook, on Slack, on Twitter, on Discord, in-person meetings, and all the ways that we connect and share. When makers decide to solve a problem together, it's clear they achieve great things. So there's hope. With that said, our next challenges are greater. They're more difficult than perhaps any other challenge before it. They are truly wicked problems, systemic and rooted in injustice and oppression. It will take all of us, individually working within our collective, to join in the work of rebuilding, supporting, and sustaining our communities, both post-COVID and post-protest, to build and create new communities that are not only regenerative and sustainable, but are rooted in justice and equality. So we are calling on you, the nation of makers, to take this point in time, when we no longer can accept the status quo and no longer go back to our lives as they were before George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Sean Reed, and Ahmaud Arbery were murdered, before a microscopic virus threatened our daily existence, to bring our communities together for the hard conversations and even harder actions that we must take, each one of us, to ensure that every single member of our community feels safe and feels valued and is safe. Please know that the cause of what's occurring in our nation today is not new. It is centuries in the making, and as such, it will take a lot of time to dismantle. Much of our nation, including the maker community, has not had the difficult and uncomfortable conversations we need to have to move forward. Most of us would agree that equality, justice, and fairness are American ideals, but many do not recognize or refuse to recognize that we have not met those ideals for a large portion of our citizens. And if we feel that the conversations that we've had have been enough, or that the output has been ample, and that we already are making the changes we need, then these past few days' events serve as a vivid reminder that we have not. But the reason that we're here today is to move the needle towards progress. Not only progress for our organizations and the maker community, but for our entire local and global community. As I said before, we know that this next challenge will be difficult because we know community change is even harder, more exhausting, and emotionally draining than individual change. But I know that our community in particular has the fortitude to deal with it. I mean, come on, more difficulty, more exhaustion. If anyone knows those feelings well, they are the leaders of makerspaces. But makers also know how to overcome obstacles with resiliency, determination, grit, and resolve. And I don't think there's ever been a problem or challenge that we've ever collectively shied away from. And the good news is that makers and maker organizations do not have to do this incredibly hard work alone. We, as an organization, Nation of Makers, exist to support you in this work. This afternoon at 5 p.m., cheap plug, we are excited to share and dialogue with you about our core principles and mechanisms to begin the conversations that are necessary to elicit real change. And through meaningful partnership, we can continue to join together with the plethora of organizations that already exist in our communities to share resources, skills, and talents to create the largest possible sustainable impact. We maintain a series of culture and inclusion resources on our website, and we are working to share a curated list of resources and organizations that you can leverage as experts and guides in your community navigate these necessary but difficult conversations. And of course, we can and we will continue to advocate for the work that you do and the real, tangible capital support that you will need to sustain your organizations and yourselves to keep this tremendous impact going. Each year's NOMCON represents an opportunity for our community to come together, to share best practices, to engage in dialogue that uplifts not only our work as a part of the maker movement, but our work as global citizens. Indeed, the challenge is large, but the makers are many, and collectively, we have so much to give. So let us consider these challenges, these difficult conversations, and use this year's NOMCON to think about how we, as makers, can build an ecosystem where the earth is nurtured, where our carbon footprints are erased, where pandemics are avoided, where systems are responsive, where education is equitable, where we create regenerative communities that support their community members fully, where systemic racism has been dismantled, and where our gifts and talents are freely shared and utilized in a way that sustains the whole, our whole society, our whole ecosystem, our whole earth, and that in doing so sustains us all. Thank you.